Good evening and welcome to the November 4, 2025 City Council regular hybrid meeting. I'm Mayor Salim Neese. This evening's hybrid City Council meeting is being brought to you in person and by Zoom. We're also broadcasting live on the city's YouTube channel. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Council members, please have your microphones turned on for roll call. City Clerk Andrea Larson, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andral.
Here.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds is absent. Councilmember Weicker.
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Here.
And Mayor Neese.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And City Clerk, if you can note for the record that Councilmember Weicker joined us remotely. All right, next we have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're in council chambers, please stand and face the flag. If you're on video, please turn off your video so we can see the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that gets us to approval of tonight's agenda. If there's no questions, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Anderall, seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Becker.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
And Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, the agenda is approved. That gets us to the City Manager's report. We welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have a very brief city manager's report this evening. Thank you, Allie, for the screen share. Council, quick look ahead at our calendar for the month of November. Your next hybrid meeting is Tuesday, November 18th. We do have a Parks and Rec Commission meeting this week. Next week, the Parks and Rec Commission and Open Space Conservancy Trust will hold a joint meeting. And the rest of our meetings for the remainder of the 2025 calendar year are updated on our website at the link on the bottom of that slide. Allie's on a mission to get me through this deck quick here. I wanted to provide just one capital project update. You may recall that we have been working on East Mercer Way, the water main repairs down at the south end of the island. We had several water main breaks occur in August 2025. We replaced over 220 feet of water main, and we are now completing the resurfacing of the roadway. The good news is that lane, the southbound lane you can see there in the picture, is expected to be open to traffic later this week. It has been closed since August, and we want to thank our community members for their flexibility working around this pretty incredible repair project. The town center parking facility, just a heads up item. We had the parking facility shut down for about 2 weeks to allow our contractors to go back in and finish the landscaping. You can see the picture there. We have plants in place now. The irrigation is in place. And the bike lockers, which I think was the last equipment remaining to be installed, has also been placed. So the site is back open, and thank you again to the community for allowing us the flexibility to shut down for just a bit and finish up that project. Council, on your calendar, wanted to make you aware that we have set the date for the pickleball court dedication in memory of Councilmember Jake Jacobson, who passed away in March. Last month, you approved a resolution naming the pickleball courts after Jake, and we are going to be dedicating them on November 18th at 4 o'clock, so that'll be just prior to your council meeting. I wanted to get the date on your calendars first, and we'll be running promotions to invite community members to come join us that evening. Also requesting Mother Nature cooperate, unlike this past Halloween. All right, next slide, please. Final slide this evening. I just wanted to acknowledge that we celebrated our 21st anniversary with our sister city last week. That's a photo. I think we have a couple of council members in there, Mayor Neese. Thank you for coming out to celebrate with the students, and we are looking forward to another 25 years together. That is all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, which gets us to appearances, which is an opportunity for anyone to speak to council on any item except those requiring a public hearing, quasi-judicial matters, or campaign-related matters. Tonight's agenda will include in-person public appearances and remote public appearances via Zoom. Individuals wishing to address the council may do so in person or by Zoom or telephone, provided they've registered with the city clerk by 4 p.m. today. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called by name. Remarks must be addressed to the council as a whole, not to individual council or staff members. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the city council may be requested to leave the meeting. Please speak audibly, state your name and city of residence for the record. There'll be a timer on the screen. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When your time's ended, I'll thank you and move to the next speaker or item of business. So, City Clerk, please call this first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker tonight is Kean Bradley. Mr. Mayor, I don't see Mr. Bradley in the audience in person or on Zoom. I'll move to the next person. Mr. Bradley, if you're in the meeting as iPhone, if you could rejoin under your name so we know who you are, that would be great. Our next speaker is Addie Smith. Mr. Mayor, I also do not see Addie Smith in the in-person attendees or in the Zoom attendees. I'll move to our third speaker. Our third speaker tonight is Dustin Jolly.
Thank you, Council, and thank you for letting me submit that request to go ahead and speak tonight on such a short notice. My name is Dustin Jolly, and I'm here to address the systemic failure within the Mercer Island Police Department, which I have documented in formal complaints to this council as well as the Chief of Police. The failure is about an internal long-standing culture of a different kind of policing in which is a pattern of suppressing, minimizing, and misclassifying criminal reports to protect the city's reputation over the rights of the victims. My own direct experience is a clear example of this. I filed a formal complaint regarding a documented multi-part felony involving vehicle theft, forgery, and fraudulent transfer of ownership. Despite providing evidence of these felonies on October 27th, I received a call from an unnamed detective from the Mercer Island Police Department. Detective, who, as I noted in my email, refused to provide his name and willfully obstructed the investigation. First, he made an illegal conclusion saying that the felony conspiracy was a civil issue, and nor he was qualified to make that judgment call. Second, he deliberately refused to accept my testimony as evidence of forgery. And finally, he hung up on me. The victim of a crime is a clear act of obstruction. This is not about bad cop or de facto policy. It's a matter of enforcement for all citizens. The department's behavior so deflectant that it is frustrating for me to even get an officer on the line, including your chief of police, in which I had to email 9 times to get a response. I have zero confidence in MIPD's willingness to investigate this, and I'm asking the council to investigate the internal culture of a selective non-enforcement that denies justice to victims of crimes on the island. There are other incidences of the same type of behavior from Mercer Island Police Department from other citizens on local forums as well. All it takes is a quick Google search to see that there is a multitude of complaints from citizens frustrated with the ability not to
Okay,
have criminal
thank you.
charges pressed.
We're going to move to the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Jessica Clausen.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Happy Election Day. My name is Jessica Clausen. My address is 6730 82nd Avenue Southeast, and I am here tonight on behalf of the Strom Jewish Community Center. I'm here tonight to speak to item 11, to ask you to reject the substantive comments added by the Planning Commission to the Omnibus Ordinance. Amendments 39 and 40 directly affect the JCC and potential future plans. Our property currently spans both commercial office and residential zones, with CUPs allowing shared parking between the JCC and the French American School. If our docketed comp plan amendment and rezone are denied, a path could involve developing the CO portion of our property with parking on the R-zoned portion, similar to what is currently being proposed under the Herzl plan. These amendments appear to have been written specifically to prevent that type of potential plan. This type of targeted action should be rejected. Equally concerning is the process by which these amendments appeared. They are nearly identical to docket item code changes proposed by a private citizen. Those proposals bypass the formal docketing process outlined in the code, and that lack of transparency undermines public trust and the integrity of the city's policymaking process. Moreover, these amendments fall outside the scope of the omnibus legislation as defined by the City Council, which was limited to administrative and state law-driven changes only. If the council believes that the concepts in amendments 39 and 40 deserve exploration, there are appropriate channels that you can use. The docketing process that will be coming to you in the next few weeks, that would allow for public input, staff analysis, and thoughtful deliberation, not rushed policymaking. Or the council could direct staff to study these things on their own. We very much appreciate the council considering the impacts that these amendments will have on the JCC, and we respectfully urge the council to reject the substantive amendments, specifically amendments 39 and 40. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Amy Lavin.
Good evening, I'm Amy Lavin. I live at 7835 Southeast 22nd Place here on Mercer Island, and I've lived here for 38 years. I serve as the CEO of the Strom Jewish Community Center of Greater Seattle, and as quick background, though I know many of you here know this, I will repeat it just for the record. The Strom JCC strives to be the most open and welcoming community-centered Jewish organization in Puget Sound, creating opportunities for profound connection for people of all generations. We reach nearly 30% of Mercer Island households with programs funded through programming fees and private philanthropy. We educate over 200 children at the J every day and hundreds more in the summer. We have the daily joy of watching dozens of high schoolers exercise side by side with octogenarians and occasionally even a nonagenarian. We present dozens of cultural arts programs each year for the broad public, and most nights of the week you can watch the Boot Boogie Babes kicking up their heels at the J. We are full of people living, connecting, and building community. I'm here tonight to also request that the City Council votes to accept only the minor comments or amendments and decline to adopt the substantive amendments added by the Planning Commission. Those substantive amendments appear to have been added late in the process and only seem to apply to two situations on Mercer Island, a Jewish synagogue and a Jewish community center. Today, the SJCC and the French American School of Puget Sound benefit from an efficient shared parking plan, which requires the organizations to coordinate programming to meet parking supply. This is smart planning, more environmentally conscious, and reflects efficient land use. It literally minimizes the surface area covered by concrete for parking. Further, the neighbors around the J have repeatedly suggested that traffic, parking, and development happen on the north end of the SJCC properties. The proposed substantive amendments would eliminate some of the best configurations for efficient property design and land use. Ultimately, the substantive amendment updates proposed by the Planning Commission appear as an effort to thwart the JCC redevelopment plans on Mercer Island, yet were presented to the Planning Commission under a different guise. The process does not uphold Mercer Island's best processes and does not appear to be in the best interest of the broader community. The J faces nearly the exact same aging issues as those experienced at City Hall and that are sought to be overcome by Prop 1. And as most know, here, in 2017, the Mercer Island City Council made land use decisions without full consideration of the impacts. And like City Hall and others on Mercer Island, we have struggled to update our facility. The J and many other community organizations on the island are suffering from those unintended consequences. Please do not make the same mistake again. Please reject amendments 39 and 40. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There are no further speakers tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda, which I'm going to give the city clerk a few moments to get on the screen. The consent agenda contains 9 items, which are available momentarily. there for you to look at. Council, I know you've reviewed these and read your packets. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Becker. Who was the second?
I think it was Dave.
Daniel? Or Dave?
You made the motion.
Okay.
I think Ted was
I'll
first.
take the second.
Okay, second goes to Weinberg. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Neese,
Aye?
Councilmember Becker,
Aye.
Councilmember Andral,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker,
Aye.
and Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, consent agenda is approved. Our first item of regular business is AB 6791, the B&O Tax Code Amendment Ordinance Number 25C23, first reading, and we welcome Finance Director Matt Mornick.
Good evening, Mayor Neese, members of the council, and City Manager Bond. I'm Matt Mornick, your Finance Director. Please let me know if you can see my opening slide.
Can see it.
All right, I'm going to be brief tonight and cover 8 slides regarding background on state-required updates to the city's municipal code relating to business and occupation tax classification. Excuse me. As the council is aware, all cities in Washington state that charge a local business and occupation tax must incorporate model ordinance language into their city code. The model ordinance is the standard legal framework used by all cities to ensure that B&O tax rules are applied uniformly throughout the state. And so this summer, the Association of Washington Cities organized a work group of tax managers and finance directors to update the model ordinance based solely on new state legislation, Senate Bill 5814. The ordinance before you this evening, number 25C-23, incorporates the model ordinance updates into the city's code, MICC section 4.10.020. This past legislative session, Senate Bill 5814 expanded retail sales tax to a list of services for which retail sales tax did not previously apply. As of October 1st of this year, these 7 kinds of services that are listed on this slide are now charged retail sales tax when they are sold. By way of background, 53 cities in Washington impose a local B&O tax. Many of these cities use a tiered system to apply a B&O tax rate that's based on a business's tax classification. The city of Mercer Island does not do this. The table on this slide provides context into the average B&O tax rate neighboring jurisdictions charge and whether they use a flat or tiered application, with Mercer Island highlighted in the yellow row. With the expansion of the retail sales tax, services that are now subject to sales tax now fall into the retailing classification for the purposes of charging a local B&O tax. Typically, there are 4 main tax classifications for businesses when charging B&O taxes. However, cities can add additional classifications. The city of Issaquah, for example, charges a different B&O tax rate based on different tax classifications. So, for example, information technology services that were previously classified as services and other business activities now are going to fall into that retailing tax classification, and they're going to be charged a new rate in the city of Issaquah. The city of Mercer Island applies a flat 0.10% tax on local gross revenues for all businesses earning more than $150,001 a year. As I mentioned earlier, the city does not use a tiered tax classification system to apply different tax rates based on the type of business. So in effect, ordinance number 25C-23 updates the tax classification as outlined in the model ordinance as we are required to. It doesn't not increase the city's B&O tax rate, and it does not expand the tax. As a result, there are no anticipated changes to the city's B&O tax revenues. In terms of next steps, the AWC work group is going to continue to meet in 2026 and 2027 to evaluate how these new B&O tax classifications are going to function in practice. I will return to the council as needed based on any additional revisions to the model ordinance. Once council adopts, after second reading, the ordinance before you, the revisions will be put into effect and incorporated into the city code section 410020, which will become effective January 1st of 2026. Staff is going to follow up with the AWC and the Department of Revenue to confirm that the required updates to the city municipal code are complete. Staff recommends that the city council set ordinance 25C-23 for second reading and adoption. With that, I'll stop sharing and pause for questions.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm just curious if this is communicated to people who pay this tax, that there's a change but no change. How is that? Can you just talk about it? I'm just interested.
Yeah, we are required per the model ordinance to update the city code, but because of the process by which we tax businesses via our local B&O tax, I do not intend to complicate anything with any additional notifications to the businesses that pay the local B&O tax here on Mercer Island. So no planned communications are put in place as of right now. However, if we were to change the tax rate or change the method in which we applied the tax, at that point, I would look to communicate with the business community and make sure that they were well aware of the changes. But as of right now, these changes do not impact businesses that are going to be paying this tax.
Great.
I will add that we are communicating with the business community because we are in early next year going to implement, using our new ERP software, an option for businesses to pay their B&O taxes online. This is in municipal finance groundbreaking, and we are excited to offer this easier way to make B&O tax payments to the businesses in the Mercer Island community.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, any other questions? All right, council, is there a motion to set ordinance number 25C-23 for second reading and adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Androl. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Becker?
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Mayor Neese?
Aye.
And Councilmember Androl.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, moving right along, our next item of regular business is AB 6802, the omnibus ordinance related to permanent regulations for housing production and permit streamlining, ordinance number 25C-27, first reading. And we welcome CPD Director Jeff Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Just a quick sound check before we start. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sure can.
Excellent, thank you. Adam's going to run through a short slide deck here that's going to recap this matter for you and present to you what the materials are in your packet for this evening. Council will recall this omnibus ordinance was conceived back in June of this year, I believe, as a way to roll a number of sets of interim regulations together into permanent regulations that then we would then be able to move on from the interim regulations and not have to renew them any further. And it also combined the work that council did in June related to the dissolving of the design commission, and we needed to go and make some mechanical changes in the code to remove the design commission references and replace them with the hearing examiner as directed by the city council back at that time. One more comment I'd like to make before Adam gets rolling here, and this comment actually applies to this matter as well as the next matter on your agenda this evening. For both AB 6801, which is the temporary use and structures, and then this matter, the draft ordinances in your packet, they were put together with all the PC recommendations that were made and included in the change matrices for each item. Those are all in the draft ordinances. So the motions that were included with each agenda bill in your packet this evening unfortunately went a slightly different direction. They were motions that were additive in nature. So What that means is we should have been not including the PC recommended changes in the draft ordinances, and then the council could have, like with the park zone earlier this year, selectively added items from each matrix for each item and added them to the ordinance to move forward for second reading. It was a good question from Mayor Neese, actually, that led us to discovering this. And so what we've done is we're going to go about things slightly differently here this evening to get to second reading in 2 weeks. In essence, what will happen is we'll have the council make a main motion when you're ready this evening for each item. That main motion would be to just move the ordinance as it's presented in your packet to second reading on November 18th. Nothing too unusual about that. And then if there's any subsequent motions to be made to remove any of the PC recommendations from the draft ordinances in your packet, a council member would then make a motion to remove a specific log number item from the matrix in your packet for this item. For example, it could be remove PC log number 51, for example, from the matrix. And then if that motion passed, that item would be removed from the ordinance for second reading. Once any subsequent motions are made to remove items, council would come back and vote on the main motion as amended if necessary. So hopefully that all makes sense. That is a way that we've certainly done business in the past. And I just wanted to point that out again for both this item and the next item on your agenda. With that, Adam, let's turn our attention here to the omnibus ordinance and run through the short slide deck for the council tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me share my screen here. So we already covered that. Just wanted to go over some quick background. As a reminder, the legislature in recent years has adopted many bills that require our local jurisdictions to amend their development code to comply with that statewide legislation. And for many of those bills since 2021, the city of Mercer Island has adopted interim ordinances to comply with those changes in the state law. The interim ordinances, though, only temporarily amend the code and must be renewed regularly until they're eventually replaced with permanent amendments. So that's really what we're here today, or what the task that was assigned was to replace those interim ordinances that related to housing production and permit streamlining with permanent amendments. We brought forward, or we're bringing forward, an omnibus ordinance that would do all of that in one fell swoop, because many of the sections of our code are actually amended by more than one interim ordinance. So by doing this all with a single action, we can consider all of those interim ordinances together and just amend the code section once, rather than open it up a couple of times to address each of the interim ordinances individually. This also gives us a chance to look at the sum total of those amendments. And then Jeff talked about this briefly, but in July, you approved a scope of work for this project. That's what we brought forward to the Planning Commission and briefed them on through the process to let them know that this is the scope of work here is really to look at these, making these interim ordinances permanent, particularly those that apply to housing production and permit streamlining. And that scope of work also directed completing this by the end of the year. So we're on schedule and on task here. A quick flyby on the process. I talked a bit in July. The council approved the scope of work. On July 23rd, the Planning Commission was briefed on that scope of work and then also on the compliance topics that we would address with the ordinance. Then the initial draft of amendments was made available on August 11th for public review and public comment. And that public comment period was open throughout the Planning Commission public hearing later in September. On September 10th, the Planning Commission was briefed on that initial draft. They were able to ask some questions about that. And then they had 9 days to complete their comments by September 19th. Then on the 24th, the Planning Commission held their public hearing. It was continued to October 8th. On October 8th, the Planning Commission concluded their public hearing and made the recommendation that's before you today. There are 6 topics that will be addressed by the omnibus legislation, and these all relate to permit streamlining and housing production. There were some changes in the state law under Senate Bill 6015 that had to do with residential parking requirements. The state law at House Bill 1293 related to the clear and objective design standards. Senate Bill 5290 had to do with permit review timelines. House Bill 1998 related to co-living housing. And then, as Jeff mentioned, we have some amendments in the ordinance that would remove references to the Design Commission to reflect that decision that was made earlier this year. And then there were some implementing amendments from the comp plan update. So these are all of the things that we're addressing with this one ordinance related to housing and permit streamlining. So the Planning Commission made some proposed amendments through their comment period, and then incorporated some of those amendments into their recommended draft that's before you today. As we were working through this with the Planning Commission, we divided, or the proposed amendments were divided into minor amendments and substantive amendments. The minor amendments were primarily those that made some kind of minor change that didn't really change the substance of the regulation. So they didn't create a new requirement or significantly alter the existing requirements. And all of those amendments, the minor amendments that they considered at their public hearing all ended up getting incorporated into the draft. And that's the bulk of the amendments that you'll see listed in Exhibit 3 to the agenda bill. The other category that comments were placed in were the substantive amendments. And these are those amendments that would alter the substance of an existing provision or add a new requirement that doesn't currently exist in the code. The Planning Commission moved forward 3 of these substantive amendments. They're log numbers 38, 39, and 40 in Exhibit 3 of the agenda bill. And we'll look at those here in the next couple of slides. Log numbers 38 and 39 are very similar amendments. They relate to the parking variance in the MF, CO, PBZ, and B zones. And the amendment here is that those parking variances, where we would allow a variance in parking, the amendment stipulates that those would not be allowed on any lot in the single family or R zones. This amendment is optional, and it's not necessary to maintain consistency with the state law or to make any of our interim regulations permanent. This was an over and above comment or amendment that the Planning Commission added during their process. Comment log number 40 similarly has to do with parking. This one's specific to the CO, PBZ, and B zones. Under the existing code, development in those zones is allowed to utilize cooperative parking, where use could share parking with an existing use in the zone or with another use in the zone. And again, this is the CO, PBZ, and B zones. And the proposed amendment under log 40 would amend this provision to require that that cooperative parking could not be placed on, or could not take place on any of the single family or R-zoned lots. Again, this amendment, comment log number 40, is another one that's optional and is not necessary to comply with the state law or make any of our interim regulations permanent. So it would be, it's not required. Looking ahead at the schedule and the next steps. So we're completing the first reading tonight. If you place this ordinance on a second reading, we're planning on doing that on November 18th, with the ordinance becoming effective before the end of the year. That concludes my presentation. I do, when we get there, if it's helpful, I have those amended motions that Jeff mentioned earlier. I can put those up on the screen if that's helpful. I have a slide with those in there when we get there.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
All right. Jeff, did you have anything further?
Not specifically. I'm not sure if Planning Chair Thompson is either
He is.
on Zoom or
He's
in
here in the
person,
audience.
but yeah, typically the Planning Chair is afforded an opportunity to speak briefly following the staff presentation on PC recommended matters on the agenda.
Very well. Chair Thompson, would you care to use the mic at the podium?
Yeah, that might be easier. Thank you. My name is Daniel Thompson, and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. I would like to recognize Adam Zach for the work that he did on this omnibus ordinance. It was pretty substantial. But I'd also like to recognize Nazim Neese and Anthony Perez. They're the two architects. And one of the things I learned about having architects on the Planning Commission is they really do seem to have a big picture. So although the council eliminated the design commission and we took the design commission out in this omnibus ordinance, it really doesn't address the discretion in the code under 1220 and 1293 that we're supposed to get rid of. We're supposed to go to a clear and objective code without a lot of discretion. And so Nazim Neese and Anthony Perez filed over 50 substantive amendments addressing the discretion of the code that they would have liked to have addressed if we had the time. But now we're being told that it wouldn't come up until 2030. And that's something I think is unfortunate. I'd hate for them to leave. They really had some good visions about getting to an objective code. So I was hoping that maybe down the road, you know, one of the things is sometimes we'll have a 2 or 3 hour meeting, but sometimes we'll have a 15-minute meeting. I bet you the next meeting is going to be like 15 minutes, which isn't a very good use of the money that's being paid to the Planning Commission. I'd like to see if we couldn't take some of Nazim and Anthony Perez's proposed amendments and address them throughout, you know, next year if we look like we're going to have a gap, because that's kind of what we're getting to. When we talked about, you know, I heard Amy and Jessica speak. We saw it differently at the Planning Commission. We saw this as eliminating the discretion to reduce parking minimums. It was a unanimous vote, you know, by the Planning Commission on this. But what we were trying to say is we have 3 different code sections. We have the residential that we did in 2017, has virtually no discretion. We have the multifamily, and we have the commercial. And we're saying that the parking variances in the commercial part of the code should not be able to be used in the residential part of the code. Generally, that's why you have different sections. You know, if I can't go into the commercial code and say I want to have a 5-story building on a residential lot. So that's what we were trying to do there. I think some of the comments, like for example, Herzl's vested. They have a vested permit, so I don't see how that would affect it. And when it comes to the JCC, their plans are to rezone to commercial. So they would fall into 1904. They wouldn't have any of this apply to them. So I just think that that got a little confused. We would love to be able to go through the code with Nazim and Anthony and the rest and one by one start getting rid of the discretion. You know, should the code official under, you know, 1293 and 1220 have the discretion, or the hearing examiner to reduce parking minimums by 25%, or even one provision is 100%. I don't think that's the intent of the code. So that's where we were going at the Planning Commission. That's why we put those 2 or 3 in. Whereas the other 50 substantive amendments that go to the discretion, we agreed to put those in the parking lot. But if you put it in a parking lot and then you're told we won't get to it until 2030, and we're going to lose Nazim Nice maybe or Anthony Perez, I don't know that that's what we want to do. I think that we can address some of these and go through. It'll take some time, but to sit down and say, well, what should the parking minimums be? We have parking minimums for a reason. What should they be? So that's all the comments I have on that. Again, I thought Adam did a fantastic job, and so did Anthony Perez and Nazim, because I know Nazim works 7 days a week, like 10 hours a day. So for him to do 40 to 50 substantive amendments was a lot. Thanks.
Almost as hard as I do. All right, council, any other questions? All right, any motions? I think we got a motion maker over here.
Yeah, I move to remove matrix log numbers 38, 39, 40 as shown in AB 6802, Exhibit 3 from ordinance number 25C-27, and direct the city manager to complete a review of parking-related standards, agreements, variances, as well as any other forms of relief from parking standards in MICC Chapter 19 for the purpose of reporting findings to the city council at a future to be determined time.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum, seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. Sorry?
Mr. Mayor, would you like the motion put on the screen?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Did you say, do you have the motion? Okay, so the staff had presented an inefficient model that we have made efficient. Yeah, this is an all-in-one omnibus motion for an omnibus bill. Yeah. Okay, so there it is, council, on the screen. And Councilmember Weicker, I'm sure you can see that. Perfect. I'll let everybody take a moment to digest that. Any questions on the motion? Speak to the motion? I'll speak to the motion just momentarily. I do think that there is a certain amount of wisdom in doing what Chair Thompson is recommending, which is, we never did go back to the RDS and do the cleanup that was proposed in 2017, and removing the discretion of the design commission and cleaning up the code is, I think, an efficient way of killing two birds with one stone. It meets the state statute, and it also gets us back to the code that hasn't been revisited. I think this motion, and I appreciate you bringing this forward, gives us an opportunity to look at parking and, why do we have shared parking and collaborative parking and variances to parking when really the problem might just be the parking standards and looking at the standards of the zone. So I think this will go a long way to trying to make things efficient and understandable and putting the pieces where they belong. So I'm going to support the motion. Any other discussion? Okay, City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Weicker,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Becker,
Aye.
Councilmember Andral,
Aye.
and Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, that motion passes. Our last item of regular business is AB 6801.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Can we have a motion to move ordinance 25C-27 for second reading?
Hold on. That's in the motion, isn't it?
No.
Move, remove. Okay,
So, as amended, so it'll be moving the ordinance forward as amended by the last motion, the second reading, I believe.
okay. Is there a motion to move ordinance number 25C-27 as amended for second reading and adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Do you care, the date? No.
Nope.
All right, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. Not seeing any discussion. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Weicker,
Aye.
Councilmember Becker,
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Mayor Neese,
Aye.
and Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, back to our last item of regular business, AB 6801, permanent regulations for temporary uses and structures, including outdoor dining, ordinance number 25C-26, first reading. And we welcome CPD Director Jeff Thomas.
Thank you again, Mayor. Joining me for this item is Molly McGuire. She's on the screen. She will also have a short presentation for the council. Not to repeat my comments from the last item in whole, but we will be doing the same methodology that essentially you just did moments ago. Friendly reminder, this item, council initially adopted interim regulations for temporary uses and structures in June of 2024. We have renewed those interim regulations once, I believe. And this effort here to convert interim regulations to permanent regulations is before you here this evening so that we don't have to renew them again, preferably. With that, Molly will walk you through a brief presentation. I believe Chair Thompson will likely want to speak again, and we'll go from there. So with that, Molly, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So a quick kind of overview of where we are. There's kind of 3 different versions of the code that we're talking about today. And the process goes all the way back to 2020 with the adoption of interim regulations to allow outdoor dining in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And these were incorporated in the Commerce on Public Property standards. So at this time, there were no regulations for temporary uses and structures on private property. And in 2024, the annual docket included 2 items to develop regulations for temporary uses and structures on private property. And these were adopted through interim regulations in June of 2024. And they wrapped in those interim regulations for outdoor dining as a temporary use as well. So now we're at the point where the Planning Commission has prepared a recommendation for these permanent regulations. The Planning Commission originally started this work back in February of this year, and during this time, the interim regulations were renewed, like Jeff said, for an additional 6 months. The Planning Commission held 2 public meetings and 2 public hearings on this item and gave their recommendation at the public hearing in September. And these interim regulations are set to expire in December. In the materials for this item, in Exhibit 3, there's a matrix that identifies the differences between those 3 different versions of the code prior to June of 2024, the code that's in place now with interim regulations, and then the Planning Commission recommended draft. And staff broke the Planning Commission recommended changes into 2 different categories, resulting in 16 minor amendments and 11 substantive amendments. The minor amendments are those that do not include significant policy changes and are narrowly focused on wording changes or clarification, with 1 change, I believe it's log item 12, in response to the dissolving of the Design Commission. And the substantive amendments, which do significantly change policy direction from either the code prior to 2024, if it existed, or the interim regulations. So I'll briefly go over those significant changes in the next few slides. But again, no action is necessary to approve these changes, and if there is a desire to not move forward with the change, a motion will need to be made to essentially subtract that change from the permanent regulations that will come back for a second reading. We'll start with the Commerce on Public Property section. The standards in this section are specifically for the use of public sidewalks, streets, and rights-of-way for the exchange of goods and services. So I've broken these substantive changes into 3 topics. The first one is the applicability of these standards, where the Planning Commission recommendation expands this section to the PBZ and CO zones, where currently commerce on public property is only allowed within the town center. One important note is that the criteria for approval of a private commerce on public property permit limits the commerce activity to public right-of-way directly adjacent to the business. So for example, a sidewalk sale in front of a bookstore or similar. Because of that criteria, the code exempts summer celebration from the provisions of this section, and the Planning Commission recommendation expands on this exemption to include the Mercer Island Farmers Market and any other events sponsored fully or in part by the city. The second change is for when a permit is required. Currently, a permit is required for all activity on public property, and the Planning Commission recommendation would actually exempt activities that operate for less than 7 days over a 90-day period from this permit requirement. These activities would still be subject to all of the criteria for approval for a permit, but compliance would not be reviewed through an application, and instead any violations would be caught through the code enforcement process or in person by the city engineer. The Planning Commission added a provision that clarifies that any permit approval does not constitute a surrender by the city of any property rights to the right-of-way and allows the city engineer to require removal of improvements under certain circumstances like emergencies or scheduled maintenance. And now moving on to the temporary uses regulations. These regulations apply to temporary uses and structures on private property, and again, did not exist prior to 2024 and are currently in effect under the interim regulations. The Planning Commission draft made several significant changes to these interim regulations, which were used as the starting point in the process. And the first major change has to do with when a permit is required. So the Planning Commission created kind of 3 categories for activities that are exempt from the permit requirement. And those are temporary uses and structures that do comply with underlying development standards and are allowed to operate for no more than 7 days over a 90-day period. And then you have temporary uses and structures that do not comply with underlying development standards, and those are allowed to operate for no more than 72 hours within a 60-day period. And then the exemptions list, or goes on to list other activities and establish durations for those activities. Some of those are carried over from the interim regulations and others are added, like the structures used for worship and clarifications to the construction-related activities in the single-family zones. Probably the most substantial change between the interim regulations and the Planning Commission recommendation is the creation of 3 permit types for different categories of temporary uses. So the interim regulations required a temporary use permit as a type 1 review for all temporary uses, except those explicitly exempt. And then the Planning Commission recommendation expands on that to include a temporary use permit, which was bumped up to a type 2 review, the creation of a temporary structure deviation as a type 3 review, and the allowance for this deviation to be renewed under a type 2 review, provided that certain criteria are met, like for example, no changes to the plan or structure. I'll give a short summary of these permit types, just to highlight the differences between the type 2 and 3 permits specifically. The type 2 permit includes public notification in the weekly permit bulletin, and examples of type 2 permits kind of include accessory dwelling units, lot line revisions, and code official design reviews for minor exterior modifications and signs. And a decision for a type 2 permit is required within 65 days. Type 3 permits require a notice to be mailed for both the application and the decision to properties within 300 feet of the subject property. The decision includes a detailed staff report, and examples of these types of permits include shoreline substantial development permits, short plats, SEPA threshold determinations, critical area review 2s, and these decisions are required within 100 days. So a bit of a difference between those two, and that's where the major jump is. So the Log 21 addresses criteria for approval. Under the interim regulations, these were kind of broken into 2 categories, one which applied to all temporary uses and structures, and the other for special uses like food trucks and outdoor dining. That's where that was incorporated into the draft. The Planning Commission kind of restructures this and strikes the additional criteria for special uses and instead incorporates them into the requirements for all temporary uses. So that included parking and noise requirements. So the most significant change here, though, is the removal of the provision that exempts temporary uses and structures from compliance with the underlying development standards. It does provide, however, a path forward for those uses through the creation of the new temporary structure deviation permit. Another pretty significant change is to the time limitations section. The table that outlined different durations for certain temporary uses was removed and instead incorporated into the provisions for the individual uses. Or it just applies a blanket 180-day limitation to all temporary uses and structures. So the Planning Commission recommendation removed the option for the 30-day extension. Like I said, the removal of the provision that exempted temporary uses and structures from compliance with the underlying development standards, there still needed to be a path forward for those uses that cannot meet those dimensional standards, because this was kind of the purpose of the items on the 2024 docket. The Planning Commission removal creates a new subsection that includes criteria for the approval of a temporary structure deviation. This would allow a temporary structure that provides significant public benefit, as outlined in the code, to exceed certain dimensional standards by specific thresholds. So it requires the use to be allowed in the underlying zone and accessory to the established use, and provide sufficient screening from adjacent residentially zoned properties. And I believe I will pass it over to the Planning Commission Chair, and then I am available to answer any questions. And I also have the motions if we need to throw them back up on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Again, for the record, I'm Daniel Thompson, Chair of the Planning Commission. This one was a little different because a lot of times we get stuff from the council or the Parks Commission, and quite a bit of the work has been done. And so this one was a little bit unformed, and it applies to 3 different types of property: public in the town center, private town center, and residential. Basically, what we didn't want to do is create a burden of a permitting for things like wedding tents or lemonade stands and things like that people don't get permits now. It's hard, especially online, to do permits, especially if you're not a lawyer, you don't have English. So we wanted to exempt a lot of stuff because that's what goes on now without any problem. And then the problem that not the problem, but the issue that we struggled the most on was how to allow non-conforming temporary structures in the R zone while limiting them to ones that really provide a significant public benefit. And that's what we looked at. And so we were working off the country club. J.B. Gibson, who's a commissioner, and Adam and Molly worked on that language, and they did a very good job. I don't think it's going to apply in very many areas. So on paper, you might look at it and say, okay, the tennis courts at the country club are like 22,000 square feet of hardscape. You cover them, they become lot coverage. Declaratory space, you're talking like 40, 50,000 gross floor area, 4 feet from the property line. But it was Commissioner Neese who came in and pointed out to us, it's the fire code that determines this. And it's actually a 50-foot setback. And so the country club and the horse farm really entered into a beneficial agreement that benefits both of them, so they could have that. I could see maybe if the money ever comes around doing this at the high school, the high school tennis courts, you would think that was actually Mayor Neese who brought that up, but that would be something that you see it. So it's a significant deviation to allow non-conforming structures in the residential zone. They're temporary, they're 180 days, but I think that we tried to do it where it wouldn't impact the neighborhood and the surrounding residential zones, but it would allow real significant benefit because, the high school kids and everybody really can use those covered tennis courts during the winter. And that's something we want to allow, but limit.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, any questions? Councilmember Weinberg.
I was wondering, Director Thomas, if you could share with us why the 30-day extension for temporary membrane structures exists in the building code standard.
Not quite sure. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I was if I was understanding the packet correctly, we were saying that there exists a 30-day extension for temporary membrane structures in the building code standard, and that striking that would essentially have us be different than the building code standard. Did I understand that correctly?
The 30-day, Molly, I'll let you jump in here. The 30-day extension is in Chapter 19 currently in the interim regulations.
Okay,
I
so the
believe
30,
it's- we put it in when we made the temporary regs.
Yeah.
okay, so when I saw the building code standard, I thought it was talking about the state building code standard. You're saying it's just in the Mercer Island building code standard?
In the interim regulations passed by City Council initially in June of 2024, correct?
Okay. And so I was wondering why we're choosing to remove the 30-day extension. Was there a reason we had it in there in the first place?
So this is a substantive recommendation of the Planning Commission to remove it.
I understand. I'm trying to understand why it was there in the first place before we remove it.
The reason why, my understanding as to the reason why it was put in the first place with the initial interim regulations was to provide perhaps a transition period so that the temporary use could be properly disassembled and vacated from a property. And within the context of that conversation, if I recall correctly, and a popular example that was used back at that time certainly was the tennis bubble situation.
Okay, and so does the same reason for creating the 30-day extension still exist, that it would need some time to take it down?
It just makes the overall timeline shorter for an applicant and a holder of a temporary use and structure permit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Anderl.
Yeah, I guess following up on that, if we thought it was a good idea to have that, kind of transition period when we enacted the temporary regulations, why do we think it might be a good idea to take it out now?
I would encourage you to direct that question towards the PC chair. Perhaps he can comment on that further, as it was a Planning Commission amendment that they voted to include in the recommendation to you.
Well, the country club says that they can take down and put up their membrane in 3 days. So 180 days is the definition of temporary. This is a pretty significant change where we're allowing non-conforming structures. This is a big structure. We figured that the 180-day, which is the definition of temporary, was fine, and they didn't need a full 30-day extension for that. That was the reason,
Okay.
Just to have a hard line. And I guess we didn't really have what what would be the permitting process to do the extension. We'd have to come up, since we didn't do that. I mean, do they file another permit or amended permit to get that extension? I don't know how that would work. So we just went with the 180-day.
Okay, thanks. Well, it sounds like it kind of streamlines things, and the 30 days isn't really necessary or being asked for by anybody, so I guess I'm fine with that. I do have one other question, unless anybody else wants to go. I was curious about the log item number 4. The temporary uses and structures on public property, no more than 7 over a 7 calendar days in a 90-day calendar period. What does that mean functionally? I mean, can somebody just drive into a city parking lot and set up a food truck or a booth to vend something for 5 days without even talking to the city about it?
Molly?
So those uses would still be subject to the criteria of approval in the Commerce on Public Property section. One of them being that one that I mentioned, where the use or the activity has to take place on the public right of way directly adjacent to the business. So they would still be subject to that criteria, for example. among other things like the noise and lighting and sound. But it would just be enforced through the code enforcement process instead of checked through a permit application.
Okay, so this is adjacent to private property, the business is, so
Yes.
what you said about a sidewalk sale or something like that? Okay, then that's clear for me, I'm fine.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'm going to get us started with a motion, and I'm going to move to remove matrix log items 3, 4, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 27 as shown in AB 6801 Exhibit 3 from ordinance number 25C-26 and schedule ordinance number 25C-26 for second reading. Is there a second?
Can you say the ones you want to remove again, please?
These
That
are
was
all the,
fast.
yeah, they're all the substantive ones. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that in a second. 3, 4, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 27.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's moved in second. The reason I want to do that is if anybody wants to add anything substantive in, I'll just ask you to make a motion to put it in. So we're not hunting around trying to figure out what anybody wants that's from the substantive. What I will say is that the temporary use code has been used by, I think, 4 applicants. It's been for bubbles over things, pools, tennis courts. This is not a set of code that can't be touched again, and it's also a temporary use code. So I would say that, you know, looking at what we've done has been something that has not had a whole lot of pushback, no substantive pushback that I've seen. I would say look at what is substantive that you really like and decide if it's really needed or not, or if it could wait. But I'm going to take amendments to the motion if anybody wants to put anything in. Did you capture the motion?
Yes, it's on the screen.
Let me look at that while. Yeah, so that looks good to me.
Can I just raise one point?
Chair, at the podium.
I just want to make sure that the council understands that once one of these permits is granted, it's good for 20 years. So the idea that, okay, you know, we can come back and revisit the temporary use permit ordinance if there's something we don't like or it didn't work out because we took some of these guardrails out, that person is going to have a vested 20-year permit.
That's a great point. So then the country club is vested for 20 years, is that right, Director Thomas? And if we were to, for example, amend this temporary use code, put in, you know, let's say remove the 30-day one-time extension per year, they would still have their 30-day exemption for the 20-year horizon, is that right?
That is not my understanding. I'm not sure where the 20-year vesting is coming from. That's not in the interim regulations that exist currently, to the best of my knowledge.
Each year, the applicant has to request a permit, and each year they'd be subject to the current code.
Correct. It's not a 20-year permit. There's nothing. Molly, can you confirm that for me?
Yeah, the interim regulations are valid for the duration of the temporary use and would need to be reapplied for every year.
Next year.
The Planning Commission recommendation did propose a renewal for the temporary structure deviation that is over a 20-year period, so that they would be able to come in and renew their temporary structure deviation application. I think it's 4 times every 5 years over that 20-year period, but that is a Planning Commission recommended change. That is not in the interim regulations.
That's a substantive change, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that 19, log 19?
Yes, that is log 19.
Okay, again, any amendments? Anybody want to make any amendments to add substantive items back in?
I might want to. I didn't realize that these would all be moved to be removed. So at this point, I would say I'm not operating on enough information to.
It's going to come back at
to yay
second
or nay.
reading, so.
Right.
As long as you're on the, as long as she's on the affirmative side of the motion, she can amend the motion at the second reading, is that right? Robert's rules?
Alrighty then.
Maybe we don't want it on consent when it comes back. Okay, any amendments? No? All right, so not seeing any other discussion. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Becker.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, that passes, which gets us to other business. The planning schedule, anything, City Manager Bond?
Nothing from me tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, council, is there a motion to excuse Councilmember Reynolds for his absence tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Anderl. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
And Councilmember Becker.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other absences coming up? Anything to report? Nope. All right, Councilmember reports. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Nothing to report.
I have nothing. Councilmember Weicker.
I just want to thank the city for hosting the Halloween gathering in the town center on Friday night. That was awesome despite the rain. So well done, staff. And nice work tonight, Molly.
Very well. Councilmember Weinberg.
Yep, so on Friday, the 24th of October, the King County Cities Climate Coalition, or K4C, had its annual in-person meeting at King County headquarters in Seattle. I counted 31 elected officials in attendance, including myself and Councilmember Weicker, plus an audience of city and staff members. The House Majority Leader, Joe Fitzgibbon, gave a 45-minute presentation plus Q&A on the state's efforts around clean energy, clean buildings, clean transportation, and clean manufacturing. He also described the impacts of federal actions, both legal and illegal, and how Washington, Oregon, and California are working around the former and fighting the latter in court. We also heard from Matt Stuarvalt, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, of Puget Sound Energy about PSC's efforts towards transitioning to clean energy. They claim to have made a lot of progress, including removing the last of their known-to-be coal energy or generated energy from their system within a year. They also claim to be building solar and wind farms as fast as the various applicable laws will allow. But the overall demand for power continues to grow faster than PSC can build power supply. Meeting wrapped up with a panel of 3 elected officials sharing anecdotes on how they've leveraged K4C to advance climate action in their communities. As one of the panelists, I made a point of trumpeting the excellent work of Alana DeRogatis from here in Mercer Island and her colleagues and the EXP consulting firm who are building an EV charging infrastructure plan that other cities can leverage. I also wanted to mention that the next open monthly lunch is going to be at 12 p.m. on Sunday, the 16th of November at Alistair Restaurant. The address, of course, is 7650 Southeast 27th Street. As always, all are welcome. And let me know if you're coming so that I can reserve a large enough table.
Okay, Councilmember Adderall.
I was just going to echo Wendy's sentiment. The Parks and Rec and YFS and the police and everybody else in attendance at the Halloween celebration in the cold rain it was awesome, and I was surprised and pleased about how many people turned out, notwithstanding the weather. It was a really nice event.
Very well. Councilmember Becker.
Nothing to report.
Okay. The next regularly scheduled hybrid city council meeting will be on Tuesday, November 18, beginning at 5 p.m. Time is now 6:14 p.m. As a reminder to council, please stay seated until city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Get out there and vote.